Hey everyone, welcome to another More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I am Jordan Smith, and Seth and I are excited because if you, our loving audience, remember, last month is when we were supposed to find out what our annual theater production was, but it got pushed back. So only this past weekend we finally did find out what it was. So if you stick around to the end of the episode, you'll learn what it is too.
Yep, we'll let you know at the end.
So stick around, stay tuned, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, meantime, we're continuing our look at Arthur. We're going to do just two more seasons. We've covered 1 through 3 so far, and we're kind of, you could say, wrapping up the golden age, the golden era of the series with seasons 4 and 5 over our next discussion or two.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth season begins with an episode that has become the subject of a meme over the years that have followed. But before that, the earlier half is DW's library card, which is pretty self-explanatory. DW getting her first library card for the Elwood City Library. It's kind of three plots, kind of one after another, because, she gets the card after having to do the hard work of learning to handwrite her own name, and then the book she wants to get is unavailable for a while, and then when she finally gets her hands on it, even then, the drama isn't over because the Tibble twins get in her head that if she damages it, she's going to lose the card forever.
Which is typical for them. They like to mess with people, troll them, and intentionally or otherwise hurt people. But yeah, the biggest plot point is, of course, the library card. And in order for her to get it, she has to learn how to write her name. And eventually, when she does, the first thing out of her mouth is, "Now I know what true power feels like." And she looks and acts like a villain as she's saying this.
Yeah.
But of course, the book that she wants isn't available. When she finally gets it, as Seth mentioned, it got into her head that if she does anything to it, then she can never take out another book in her life. But when she finally does get the book, she still can't read. So she has Arthur read it to her, and when it's finally over, she thinks she has to return it and can never read it again, only for Arthur to say, "Hey, there's a such thing as renewing a book."
Yeah, I got a pretty good feeling this one won't be on the wait list for a while. She's going to renew it as often as she can.
Yeah, she even closes off the episode basically with her going, "I'll take it out again and again," and Arthur immediately regrets bringing up what renewing a book is.
Yep, so there's that bittersweet resolution on Arthur's end of it, kind of as pretty often.
And I'm sure in the back of his mind he's thinking, "I can't wait until she learns how to read so I don't have to do this."
Or what have I done?
Yeah, which is probably a question he often asks himself when it comes to his sister.
Yeah. But then comes the somewhat culturally infamous story of Arthur's big hit, which you probably have seen the moment be memed or videoed or dubbed in the past. Leading up to it, for context, Arthur has been working hard on a model plane, assembling it, painting it up, and apparently it's a replica or a model of the plane that famously broke the speed of sound, piloted by Chuck Yeager, which, well, they don't really mention his name, but anyway.
Yeah.
DW was constantly kind of getting in the way, getting into the supplies, kind of getting our hands on the wet paint. But then eventually Arthur does get it finished and all perfected. And then when he goes downstairs to celebrate, DW gets in his room and, thinking it can fly, sends it out the window. But because it's a model plane, it doesn't fly, it just crashes.
Yeah, the way they shoot that moment, I say shoot as if it's a live action thing, but the way they animate it so that you see the plane falling out the window and like, you don't see it hit the ground, but the implication is there. And Arthur's looking away, so he doesn't see it happen right away. But you see it happen, you're like, oh man, he is not going to be thrilled. And of course he's not, because after she says, your plane is broken, it doesn't fly at all. And that makes him realize what just happened, so he goes outside and sees the plane in pieces. And this is the moment that is probably the most well known because of the moment where he's balling up his fist, getting very frustrated, understandably so. But I looked this episode up on IMDb, and the frame they use as like a thumbnail for that episode is that moment where he's balling up his fist. So of course he gets mad, and the infamous punch happens where he hits her, and that's when one moment happens that every child dreads, is when their parents call them using their middle name.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty much the James Isaac Neutron before Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In this case, it was Arthur Timothy Reed, and he even goes, oh no, middle name.
I know what that means. Yeah. And apparently it's so bad that apparently you don't really see a visual of an injury, but there is a pretty clear effect of it because, I don't know, I guess she was internally bruised or something. I think her dad has to ice it or something. So.
Yeah, you don't see the initial impact, but you definitely see her fall to the ground and then get up and run off crying.
Yeah.
And once he does talk with his parents, they punish him, and he feels it's unjust because it feels like they're not even acknowledging why he did what he did.
Yeah.
But eventually, I know most people don't believe in karma, but as they say, what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
Because eventually, Binky hits him. And the reason for that is because his so-called friends basically say, the next time you see him, you hit him.
Yeah.
So Binky tries to do everything in his power to never make eye contact with him.
So he doesn't have to hit him, which he doesn't want to do.
Which, again, shows his softer side. Eventually, though, they do lock eyes because Arthur tries to give him back something that he dropped.
Yeah.
But then, of course, Binky hits him, and he goes through a similar cycle that DW did. And he tries to be like, me hitting her was nothing. This guy's so much bigger than me. But eventually, through talking with his parents, it finally, for no pun intended, hits him that now I understand how she felt.
Yeah.
He goes and tells Binky, I just want to thank you. You helped me realize how I made her feel.
Yeah, it is kind of, I don't know, it is kind of a dangerous message. I feel like it potentially can convey that you need more violence to resolve the initial violence in this case, but sometimes something like that is probably what it takes to get the message through somebody's head. Yeah, so I guess it's pretty complicated.
It is very complicated because, yeah, sometimes it takes something big in order to get somebody's attention and make something click in their heads. But I think the message they were more so trying to go for is, try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And yeah, you may be justifiably upset, but that doesn't give you the right to
Right.
hurt someone.
Right. Yep. Yep. But then we go into a lighter story, somewhat, titled Hide and Snake, in which I don't remember seeing this one. Basically, Arthur and his friends find a snake and basically sneak it into the Reed house. But they lose track of it, and now they're concerned whether or not it's poisonous. Because I guess they're not familiar with the red touches the black, red touches yellow thing. So their goal is to pretty much get the snake out of there without the Reed family ever finding out it was there in the first place.
And I can't remember if this is when they first find it or when they lose it and then find it again later. Because one part that I can still kind of picture is when Arthur starts laughing because he thinks somebody's tickling him. But then he pulls the snake out of his shirt. Which, even if the snake wasn't poisonous, that probably would scare the crud out of me.
Yeah. Even a non-poisonous one?
Well, yeah, because at first I don't know what's going on, and then I reach into my shirt and out comes a snake. And I'm not necessarily terrified of snakes. I'm more so frightened of bugs. But I've seen some videos where a snake, if you don't grab them by the, right behind their head, they could, turn around and try to bite you. Which I don't know if non-poisonous snakes bite, but still, just the idea that they could just immediately turn around and get you, that prospect is more what would make me nervous.
Yeah, honestly, snakes do make me somewhat nervous sometimes, to be fair.
Of course.
I think I was out hiking once. Someone said, yeah, watch out, there could be snakes in the ground. And so, yeah, I was not totally chicken, but I was pretty nervous still. I mean, I know about, the red touches the yellow, red touches black, but still, I don't know if I'd want to come into contact with one. Because if they got neither ring, I guess, then I don't know what to expect.
Well, yeah, for sure. I'm not the biggest expert on snakes anyway, and I would leave them alone in most cases anyway. But most of the time when I have gone hiking somewhere or just walking on some trail, the snakes I do find are like those harmless garden snakes or something similar. So I'm not too worried about those. But even then, I still keep my distance.
Yeah. Right. And then we have Muffy's new best friend, in which Muffy gets a new pair of shoes she really loves, and Francine takes her to the soccer field, and Muffy gets the shoes dirty from the ground and makes an emergency phone call to be picked up, and then she's expecting to meet her at her place for some fashion award show party, but she never shows up. And so Muffy pretty much then starts searching for someone else to be her best friend in her place. And she tries people like the Brain, Binky, and interestingly, DW, which is actually would make a pretty interesting pair because I feel like they have more or less the same attitude and level of intellect. And she seriously considers him, or her, yeah, but doesn't really, for some reason, work out.
Yeah, she does have a list of people that she considers, and one of them, if I recall being Buster, takes him to some fashion store, some type of boutique, and he starts panicking. So he runs off, goes into his toy store, and he's like, "Ah, much better."
Oh
Which,
man.
me at that age, I probably relate to some degree. I didn't necessarily hate going clothes shopping, but I feel like if I was in his shoes, I'd be very similar.
I don't know. I think the thing for me with clothes shopping is like if my mom or dad makes me try a bunch of different things, even if I need just one thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I have had that happen before where one of the first things I try is something I really like. So I'm like, yeah, let's take this one. And then somebody will be like, no, hold on. You might like this next one better.
Yeah.
I already said that I like this one.
I don't know.
And I would love there to be an edit of the premise of this episode where Muffy has Patrick's voice and she goes, "Guess we'll have to find a new best friend. Hey, Squidward!"
Yeah, but then we have Buster's Breathless, a story mainly presented as a flashback. The framing device, DW gets herself covered in poison ivy while playing with Arthur and Buster, and she desperately attempts to keep the marks hidden with hockey gear here, so people won't run away. And then Buster presents the flashback story of how he was diagnosed with asthma and how he was kind of stigmatized for it for a while, basically. And eventually they learn more about it, they understand it better, and it works out in the end.
Yeah, I do like episodes like this when they have an episode or a message dedicated to a challenge or a disability or some serious topic that most kids shows wouldn't even think of approaching, because it acknowledges these things are real and this is how we can handle them. And people like us with various disabilities, physical, mental, developmental, and so on, a lot of times once people do learn about our disabilities, they do start treating us differently, and usually not for the better. So to have episodes like this that not only acknowledge that it exists, but say, hey, it's okay to have this, it might have its challenges, but this is how you can interact with those people.
Yeah.
It reassures us that it'll hopefully educate more people so that they don't treat people differently because of it.
Yeah. Nice thing that Buster says at the end, I'm the same me. I just have asthma.
That is really important, for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's like just because you find out something different or new about a person doesn't mean they themselves are suddenly a whole different person entirely.
Right. Yeah. But, to be fair, it is a medical condition, so the kids probably don't understand, It's not one of those contagious sort of things. It's not like a crazy, dramatically problematic sort of thing. It has its triggers, its limitations, but it's still okay, though.
Yeah, of course. And they tackle other serious things. I think we've touched upon how one of the characters eventually gets cancer, and they talk about that.
Right.
In the infamous April 9th episode, and that's the name of the episode, not the date it was aired. Unless it was, I don't know. In any case, Arthur is traumatized at the idea of losing his father, so every time his father goes out somewhere, he's picturing like the worst thing that could possibly happen to him. So his dad sits down with him and says one thing that he did to help him when he thought he was going to lose his own mother.
Yeah. Then after that is a Halloween-themed episode called The Fright Stuff.
Yeah. Oh, were you about
No,
to?
no, no. Go ahead.
Okay. This one has a little bit of infamy, I guess, mostly because of the ending, but we'll get to that. The idea is they go, like the main cast, they all go into this big house where the author of one of their favorite book series is actually going to read it out loud. But in the process of all that being set up, it turns into a guys versus girls type of prank war
Yeah.
as they go into various rooms trying to scare the crud out of each other.
Yeah. Is it the author of the Scare Your Pants Off series?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, there is a sort of a prank war. Kind of starts with like Muffy and Francine messing with Buster, Binky, the Brain, and Arthur, and then they all attend a party at a haunted house. Interesting fact: there is a haunted house literally located right next door to our Artists Unlimited studio that me and a couple of our castmates have gone to.
Yeah, I went there last year, and there were definitely some good moments, and oddly enough, at least at the time of going through it, all I was doing was looking around and thinking, wow, these sets are amazing.
Huh. Yeah, yeah, it was fun from my experience.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyway, basically the boys are trying to kind of level the playing field, get back at the girls for their practical jokes. But it doesn't quite go exactly how they plan or want it to.
Yeah, basically, they come up with this ultimate prank eventually where Binky has a pumpkin head and like a ghost sheet thing that he's going to do to scare the girls. And then somebody shows up and scares the girls in that supposed costume, but it's not Binky. And we find this out because while that person or whoever it is still there, Binky shows up in an entirely different costume saying his other one was damaged.
Yeah.
So Arthur's like, wait, if you just got here, then who is this? And the camera pans down and shows that this person under the costume supposedly has no feet. So this is an actual ghost.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of stretching the reality a little bit.
Yeah, apparently in this cartoon world, ghosts are real, which is kind of where the infamy comes in because not everybody believes in ghosts or has their own reasons for why they believe so. So after they discover that this ghost is real, they all run downstairs and explain what happened. And at the same time, Muffy's dad is talking about, what have I told you about pulling pranks on people? It pans upwards to the attic where this ghost is now interacting with their family, getting the same lecture.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you see something similar in like the Return of the Snowball episode where the aliens who hypothetically or theoretically, whatever the word is, took the snowball. One of them is saying to the kids, I hope you realize what happens when you beam down into people's kitchens and take stuff from them.
Yeah, and then I believe there's supposed to be an actual ghost, even though they look like the other characters. But I know there's one ghost-like character that looks like Binky called the Ghost of Lunch Tomorrow or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's kind of a Christmas Carol kind of theme. Yeah.
I think that was the general premise, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think he shows up more than once, but I digress.
Oh yeah, he does kind of on and off, yeah. And then we have probably, to this point at least, the most interactive episode in the series. It's called The Contest, and it's basically centered around a compilation of fan fiction stories of sorts submitted by kids starring several major Arthur characters. And there's different animation styles, different kinds of stories they tell. and they're clear spoofs of things like South Park, Beavis and Butthead, Dr. Katz Professional Therapist, and so it's wildly creative in an unusual way.
Yeah, this is one of those episodes that really dives into the various references. Because some episodes they might throw in one or two, but this one has a lot. And some of them I am kind of surprised they did. Like South Park, as you said, was one of them. Because that show, while very cartoony, is not made for kids in the slightest.
Oh, no. Nope.
But Beavis and Butthead make another return reference in there. And they even, if I recall correctly, they even directly reference Teletubbies.
Yeah. It's like, hey, it's the fifth Teletubby.
Yeah, because one of the ideas in Muffy's mind is that she tries, or rather models this new costume, which honestly does look like it would be a Teletubby. But, yeah, this has references galore, and they all try to submit something for this contest, and if this is the ending I'm thinking of, they don't find out who wins until 5-6 years later.
Yeah, 5 years, yeah.
And then none of them wins anyway.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. And the winner ends up being actually the kid who suggested the concept of the episode, Holly Holland. And the subsequent Word From Us Kids segment is actually centered on her.
Which I think is honestly a nice touch, because a lot of the midway sequences is a group of kids, usually in a school-type setting. But the fact that they mention her by name in the actual episode and then kind of show her in the middle, like, I'm sure she's held on to that memory even to this day.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I definitely would.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And there are a variety of short stories throughout. There's like one about the brain creating a formula that grows hair on things. There's the Dr. Katz parody where Arthur's talking about, dealing with his sister as an adult. The modeling runway story. Story of like Arthur and maybe some other characters getting abducted by aliens. And so, and there's a wrestling story at one point, I think, and yeah, so there's a whole variety.
Yeah, this is one of those episodes where the writer's creativity really shined through.
Yeah. And then there's Prove It, which basically is like another story of DW kind of wanting to kind of fit in with Arthur and his peer crowd. And she starts hanging with the brain, learning a little bit about science. And when Arthur refuses to take her to the museum, she basically creates one of her own that is wildly scientifically inaccurate, the way she explains all these things about how things work and stuff. And eventually Arthur gets so annoyed and so anxious that he decides to take her to the museum and kind of show her, you see how you were wrong? And it's kind of hinted at the end that DW knew she was wrong and she was just doing that so he'd take her.
Yeah, but it was all one big ploy.
Yeah.
Basically, for her to basically tick him off so much that he's like, you know what? I'm taking you here to show you all the different things that are actually true. Yeah. And after she reveals that that was her plan, he's like, oh, a smart DW, I don't think the world's ready for that.
Oh, yeah.
But one thing about this episode, even as a kid, that kind of bothered me is, like, he goes on this little museum tour thing that she set up and is constantly like, no, that's not right. only once does. Okay, so the idea is the episode is called Prove It because multiple times he says, "This is wrong, this is how it actually works." So she says, "Prove it," which he doesn't immediately have a way to do so. Only once does he respond with, "You prove yours." And I kept thinking, if he had her do that for all the other ones, he might have actually stumped her at one point.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But, they're 4 and roughly 8 years old, respectively, so they're not going to think too deeply, particularly in hindsight. So, oh well.
Yeah. A neat thing they do in the cold open, they explain how night and day change to each other, and that's where I learned how that works. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I forgot that's where that episode opener came from.
Yeah. Yeah. And then moving on to the blizzard, in which a snowstorm kind of forces school into cancellation and knocks out the electricity. Apparently, except for the Reed home. Apparently, they have electricity that nobody else has got. And so, a bunch of people from town, from Arthur's class or whatever, kind of stay for a while at the Reed house with their family. It's basically them struggling to kind of adapt to these, what you might call primitive conditions. But on the more positive side, Francine does come up with some inspiration for an assignment she has to write about pioneers, writes about their struggles and how they're similar to what they're going through right now.
Yeah, I definitely like this episode, and even today, it's still very relevant. Like this past winter, at least around here, there was at least one really bad snowstorm that we had where everyone's vehicles were buried. They were basically saying, don't travel unless you absolutely have to. I don't know about all the people who lost power necessarily. I don't think I did. But within the last couple of weeks or so, we had a bad windstorm where a lot of people lost power for at least a day or two.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when that happens, people's creative minds really start flowing. It's like, okay, what can we do while the power's out? They might pull some resources together. They might do some fun things that they normally wouldn't think of when the power was working. So, they start doing that in this episode too.
Yeah. It does kind of remind me of a time when, for different reasons, not necessarily because of weather, me and my family had you over for a couple days or so. Yeah. Yeah, it was over like the Christmas season, I think, just after our third show together.
Yeah, I think it was after I got back from Christmas, but because I went to Florida to spend it with my family. But when I got back, the place where I was staying at the time, I don't think they had power. So then your family had me around for about a couple days or so, which I am forever grateful for.
Now, I think the family you were living with, you said they had COVID, actually.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it wasn't the loss of power. It was either they had COVID or they suspected that they did, so they didn't want to risk it.
Yeah. But then we have The Rat Who Came to Dinner, which, kind of interestingly, involves more snow troubles. In this case, snow has damaged Mr. Ratburn's house. And so he ends up staying with the Reed family for a little while. And before he settles in, Arthur is nervous because, all he knows about Mr. Ratburn is the kind of, giving homework, all these intellectual stuff, and he feels like it's just going to be pretty much school at home. But then we discover that he's into like the fictionalized version of Scooby-Doo in the Arthur universe, and he's actually got a fun side that we haven't really seen that much of.
It really goes to show that you can't take every person or everything at face value. Like, we've known people ourselves that are like they act differently entirely depending on the scenario that they're in. Like our music director for our theater groups, when we're in rehearsal, she likes to keep the ball rolling, likes to keep everybody focused, and that makes sense. But when rehearsal's over and you're just casually talking to her, not that she wasn't before, but in those situations especially, she's very friendly.
Yeah, I don't think I can say enough high stuff about her. And, she's often busy, so I don't really get to talk to her as much, but she's always a great ray of light and joy, and she's a great teacher, great pleasure to work with.
Oh yeah, she's smiling very frequently, and even when she isn't, it's usually because she's trying to, rope people back in when they're being distracted or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is very busy. She's a professor, she's a director, she's, of course, a mother. So I gotta admire her for that. And to give an idea of how busy she is, when the show announcement was done this weekend, she basically showed up, announced what show we were doing, and then left to go be there for her kids at a baseball game, I think it was.
Yeah, I think both her kids are active in sports.
Which, honestly, good for them, because I kind of did that growing up as well.
Oh, yeah, right, the varsity basketball thing.
I did basketball for a season, and especially when I was younger, I did a lot of tap dancing and soccer.
Ooh. So you've actually got some classical dance training, I guess.
Yeah, technically, although I stopped after I was like 10 years old, so it's been a while.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. But then on the... then it kind of takes a turn when Arthur's classmates are kind of mean to him because, they feel like he's like... They treat him kind of like how people talk about Nepo kids.
Yep.
Basically they consider him like getting special treatment because of Mr. Ratburn, getting good treatment from his family, or because he's living with them for a while. And so it gets a bit tough.
For those who may not understand what a Nepo kid or nepotism really is, it's basically when someone has an unfair advantage in a certain field because of people that they know. Oftentimes for example, in the acting world, like somebody just jumping into a film despite having no experience or training simply because their parents are also actors.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like that's used to describe kids who may not exactly fit that description of just being given things, but they're kind of stereotyped as that because of their parents' fame, unfortunately, I think. But I suppose that is true, though, about some of them.
Yeah, so the students all are getting upset with him because they think that he's getting positive grades and such because of Mr. Ratburn living there. And right around the time it finally clicks that that's not the case, Mr. Ratburn says that, yeah, I won't be staying with you anymore, but my house is still in the process of repair, so I may stay with somebody else. And everybody goes into an instant panic, going up to him saying, hey, what was it like?
And Binky even kind of collapses to the floor like, Mr. Ratburn, in our house?
Yep, and he just... I don't know if he full-on faints or at least pretends to, but yeah, he definitely falls over.
Yeah. Yeah, he just kind of like have that wide open-eyed freeze. But then we have a story that I don't personally remember. It's called DW Tailspins. And basically DW wants to prove that she can tell a good story. And she ends up doing her own spin on Homer's Odyssey.
And yeah, this is also one, like you were saying, that I'm not as familiar with. But one thing I do remember is this is one of the times where instead of a TV show, they parody a book series. Like I think it's called Vegemorse, which is a direct parody of a real-life book series called Animorphs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because we have a mutual friend who was really into the Animorphs series. I remember I was on the road with him one time and he had one of the audiobooks playing. And he mentioned that someone is developing the Odyssey legend into a musical. And I got to hear a couple of the songs from it.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm assuming it was good.
Yeah, from what I've heard. I think it's still in development, but it sounds pretty good from what I've heard. It's kind of like a modern kind of Hamilton type thing, it sounds like. It'd be interesting to see if it ends up getting to the finish line.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But then with this episode, after she is done telling the story, Arthur was like, "Oh, it's not as good as the stories we've been reading," and she's like, "Well, apparently you can't recognize a good one because I basically just told the story of the Odyssey." And eventually, she impresses both him and Buster, and they're like, "Can you tell us that story again?"
Oh. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Usually Arthur's friends are nicer to DW than Arthur himself is, and including Buster. So it's really nice to see that.
And in this case, at the very least, Arthur doesn't necessarily outright admit defeat when he's actually losing an argument with his sister, but he is kind of humbled here by how impressed he is and even asking her to tell the story again. So, props to him in that regard.
Yeah. Yep. And then we kind of briefly mentioned this a little bit earlier tonight, but this one is Prunella Gets It Twice, where Prunella gets the doll for her birthday that she wanted, but then opens another gift and realizes it's the exact same one, so she kind of brushes it off, tosses it aside, and kind of goes on with the party. And she notices that Francine has been kind of distancing herself from all the fun of the party since then, but she has no idea why. And then, through a dream sequence, we see how hard Francine worked, how hard she searched or whatever, trying to find that toy that Prunella had her eye on. And then Prunella fully understands and goes to make amends with her.
Yeah, this is definitely the Christmas Carol kind of It's a Wonderful Life thing where these ghosts show her exactly like just how much Francine went through to get this for her. And I think it even ends with them reconciling and the Ghost of Lunch Tomorrow is in the background
Yeah.
saying they'll have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Oh, banana, actually.
Oh, it's banana? Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So then Prunella says it out loud in response, and Francine then says it and goes, "Wait, how did you know what I was going to say?"
Yeah. And the ghost just kind of goes.
Yep, he's just giggling back there because he basically trolled them.
Yeah. And then speaking of Binky, he is pretty much the star of the very next story, titled Binky Barnes' Wingman, in which Binky does a project focused on butterflies, and he eventually catches a rare species of one, or is obsessed with catching it, but then he later learns how butterflies are treated, and then decides instead of keeping them, he'll let them go, I guess.
And for those that may be confused, even though it's called Binky Barnes' Wingman, where wingman usually refers to, for example, somebody helping another person meet someone they're attracted to. In this case, it's called Wingman because he's going after a particularly rare butterfly with distinct wings.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is because in their city, they're having something called Bug Week, which I don't know if I'd be able to sit through.
Yeah.
Like, if I know the bugs are fake, then yeah, I'd probably be fine. But having an entire week dedicated to something I'm afraid of, I guess, in hindsight, could possibly help me with my fear, because they often say that one of the things you can do to ease your fears is to be repeatedly subjected to it.
Yeah, face it head on. Yeah.
So maybe if there was a bug week, I'd turn out better instead of worse.
Yeah, I know, like, I guess there are some pros to bugs, like, there are certain ones that you can eat and they can have protein. There's like cricket powder or something. But even generally, I still don't like bugs in my house. And
Sure.
right now, we're dealing with, on the main floor of our house where I live, there's an ant problem that we're having to deal with. And we've been like setting up more ant traps like around the kitchen and stuff. It's not exactly fun.
I think as it gets warmer, ants will pop out every once in a while.
Yeah.
And they sometimes say that once you see one, you can never get rid of them. But I don't know how entirely true that is, because sometimes after setting up traps, I won't see them for a good while. But in terms of this episode, one thing that I do like is that this isn't like a one-off thing. Like, as Bug Week goes through, Binky is suddenly fascinated with butterflies, and then after the week passes, he is never interested again. Because I do know there's at least one episode where his family goes out to China to adopt a baby, and he's talking about, this is one of the few times where I can see this particular butterfly up close, because they don't have them in our city. So it's like once it's established, it's stuck with him.
And then the next story is called To Beat or Not to Beat, which basically is focused on a problem of sorts, if you can call it that Francine has. She can play drums, and apparently she can sing good too, but she can't do both at the same time, which I can kind of relate. I don't think I can dance and sing too well at the same time, honestly.
It's definitely something to get used to. It's kind of like when, as a kid, they have you try to pat your head and rub your stomach at the same time. But yeah, I know plenty of people that can do one or the other, but then lose focus if they try to do both.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that often comes with a lot of training, experience, and repetition. Uh, what is interesting about this premise is that I think there's a future episode where she is singing in some stage musical about the history of their city. And she does, if I recall correctly, sing and dance. So this is another case of something that is established in one episode that comes back in a later one.
Yeah. Yeah. And Francine's voice actress, Jodie Redster, is actually a professional singer. She's recorded some music. She sings a little bit on the Arthur series. Yeah, and she's genuinely good.
Yeah, like in a previous episode we talked about when they were trying to invent a holiday, her whole idea is done in song. And of course, she's teaching Arthur how to sing for the episode I was just talking about. And yeah, Francine is a good singer, so I would definitely buy that the person voicing her is too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have a story called 1001 Dads, which revolves around a Father's Day picnic, which is interesting since Father's Day was just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And basically, if you know Buster's situation, he's living with a single mom. His parents are split up. His dad travels a lot. And so it's difficult for him. But it somehow works out.
Yeah, they try multiple things to convince Buster to go to this Father's Day event by having somebody pose as his father, even going as far as saying maybe Mr. Rapper didn't do it. But I'm trying to remember exactly what the solution was. I know Buster said he wasn't going because he had plans. And I think the idea was he was setting something up for the event, but he didn't want to tell anybody to surprise them.
Yeah, it is kind of a surprise what he does. Basically, his dad arranged for hot air balloon rides for everybody.
That's true, yeah, and I do remember this now because there's a moment that I think this is one of the first times I really understood what a dad joke was. Because as they're all about to get on the balloon, this is right after people were doing like father-child egg toss contests. Well, Arthur gets one in the face. So before he can get on the balloon, he starts turning away. I'm like, wait, don't you want to turn? He's like, yeah, I'll be right back. I just have egg on my face. Which is actually a phrase that somebody will use when they say they're completely embarrassed. But he literally had egg on his face.
Yes. Yeah, and then we have a story, interestingly, another Prunella birthday story in the same season, apparently. This case titled Prunella's Prediction, and it's about a sort of fashion trend, which is it's pretty interesting. An item of clothing called flash pants, basically a set of pants that flash black and white rapidly. I mean, kind of like how I know there was that one episode of Full House with the prom dress with battery-powered lights on it. So it's not totally out of the question, I guess. But anyway, Prunella wants to get these. She wants to be kind of seen by Muffy as cool or whatever, but is unable to get them. And so she's kind of embarrassed to not have them and kind of trying to keep her identity hidden and kind of and kind of recluse herself in her house for the rest of the winter, just so no one gets wise. And meanwhile, Arthur is given by his grandma a coat inspired by a comic book hero titled Mr. Puffy. It's a sort of puffy marshmallow texture or thickness type coat that he's afraid to be seen in.
He even, I don't know if it's him imagining this or somebody else, but I think it's him imagining like him floating on the water because his friends are struggling to stay afloat.
Yeah.
So he floats on over as this character in this coat, and they all just laugh at him instead of acknowledging that, hey, he's here to rescue us.
And I think they like pelt him with snowballs.
Something like that, yeah, which just shows how deep his fear is that he'll just be made fun of.
Yeah.
But Prunella is so certain that she'll get these flash pants, but is then disappointed when she gets something like a watch.
Yeah, a watch, yeah.
And I don't remember exactly what these flash pants look like. I do remember them just going between black and white really quickly. But it does make me wonder about potential seizures from looking at this for too long. Like, I don't know if it's because it's black and white that it isn't nearly as effective in that regard. Because I know in other cartoons, when something would flash red and blue really quickly, then that would more than likely cause a seizure.
Oh, yeah. There certainly have been, like, warnings of, like, photosensitivity triggers, like, on Netflix, and, of course, the infamous warning in front of theatrical screenings of Incredibles 2. So, yeah. We've certainly...
that also came to my mind.
Yeah, we've certainly gotten more cautious or more protective about that.
Oh, yeah, and even most video games now, there's usually a warning on the back talking about the potential of flashing colors and lights, saying, see a doctor before playing this game if you think you have epilepsy.
Yeah. Oh, anyway. Next we have another one I'm not too familiar with. What is that thing? In which several of the kids find a metal bobbin. They don't know what it's for or what it does. But somehow it actually works for each of them in a variety of ways. But then they eventually only find out who it belongs to and what it does for the owner.
Yeah, I don't remember too much about this one. I just know that, you know, they find this little spool or whatever it is, some type of wheel of string, and whoever is in possession of it seems to just have constant good fortune. But I don't remember how this one gets resolved.
Yeah. Well, they find out it belongs to Mr. Ratburn, and it has a sort of use involving puppetry.
Well, that does make sense, because I know it's established that Mr. Ratburn is at least somewhat into collecting puppets or doing some type of ventriloquism.
Yeah. And at one point in an earlier episode, during the cold open, you see him actually performing a little puppet performance at the library for the kids.
And I would imagine that this is one of those pure coincidence types of things where after they give the spool back, suddenly everything just goes wrong for them.
Yeah, well, I don't really know that much. But anyway, we've then got Buster's Best Behavior. Basically involving Buster wanting to be good at something different than he already is, and Arthur wanting to be funny just like Buster, and so they pretty much start behaving like each other, which concerns some of their friends.
Yeah, they start getting very confused as they're doing this, and this immediately, when even reading the description of this episode, made me think of the SpongeBob episode where Patrick tries to get an award, and he goes as far as to mimic SpongeBob, dress like him, talk like him, and that had its own problems, and now we're kind of seeing it here.
Yeah, basically Patrick copies every little thing, even right down to his accidentally wiping out on the floor.
Wiping out on the floor, putting his hand on the stove, purposefully chopping himself up with a jump rope, bonking himself over the head with a hammer.
Yeah. But then we have a story that is probably especially relevant to the current time because the annual local jazz festival has just started up. It's a story called My Music Rules. Basically, the library is looking for some musical talent to put on a show for kids. And one person suggests jazz musician Joshua Redman. Grandma Thora recommends cellist Yo-Yo Ma. And both of them star as themselves. And there's some disagreement that goes on, but then they eventually kind of learn how different styles of music can coexist.
And for those who might have missed it in what Seth was saying, which I don't know how, but Yo-Yo Ma and Joshua Redman are actual people.
Yeah.
Although I think in this episode, Joshua Redman is supposedly Francine's uncle.
Oh yeah, she does mention.
And they even go as far as imagining what would be like if they did like a battle of music in a boxing ring type of thing.
Oh yeah.
But it turns out that not only do they get along and they play together really well, but they even played the song that Arthur dreads, which is the Crazy Bus song.
Yeah.
But he's not bothered by it, and he even goes, wow, they even make that sound good.
Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of nice when one genre will kind of borrow from pre-existing material of another one, or when genres are fused like I'm a fan of the group DC Talk, which was a Christian music group that was kind of a fusion of rhythm and blues, soul, and rap rock. And I mentioned that Vic Mignogna, the voice actor, was an arranger on a couple of the songs on the first album. But anyway, yeah, they had a very creative blend of different styles, and I'm a personal fan of jazz music. I've been listening to the local jazz station a lot lately, and so I'm probably in a minority, but I'm proud of it though.
Which you should be, because everybody has their own taste when it comes to music.
Yeah. And then season 4 concludes with probably one of the most relatable stories, titled That's a Baby Show, involving Arthur. While initially intending to see a sort of Bionic Bunny spin-off sort of thing that's very much Batman-looking thing, stumbles across what seems to be pretty much a fictionalized version of Teletubbies, but it's called Love Ducks, and it involves a bunch of ducks basically quacking classical music.
And for one reason or another, he quickly gets entranced by this show and just genuinely enjoys it. But he doesn't want to let that on to his friends because again, he's worried he'll be made fun of. So anytime they suspect that something's up, he tries to hide it. Like when his friends see him watching it through the window, he's like, "Oh, I'm just watching this with my baby sister. Oh no, she's gone. Where'd she go?" And goes to find her. But they can even then tell that something's up. So one thing leads to another, and eventually not only is he watching it, but so is like all his friends. Like they're all sitting there enjoying the show, and they end up blocking Kate's view a little bit.
Yeah, and at one point, even Buster, upon finding out or getting wise, gets personally really invested in it, and even in kind of a flip-flop of an earlier scene where Arthur is going to the store, trying to discreetly buy, like, the Love Duck soundtrack. Like, Buster goes to the same clerk, and he's proudly sporting the Love Ducks t-shirt, and he's like, yeah, I'm a big fan.
And I definitely understand why somebody would be embarrassed if somebody spoke over the intercom saying, "Do we have a copy of this?" It's like, if it were me, like if I were in that worker's position, I'd go and directly speak to another adult saying, "Hey, do you know where this is?" instead of just announcing it for the entire store to hear. But, it's more done for a visual gag type of thing in this episode.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess he just didn't want to leave his desk. I think it was maybe just too lazy. I don't know.
Yeah, entirely possible, but either way, it works out for everybody because they all start liking and watching the show.
Yeah, they all seem to get into it by the end.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever had, a situation like that. I think a lot of stuff made on that kid level I've pretty much grown out of and not really enjoyed anymore, except for maybe like the occasional Big Comfy Couch episode or something like that. But I don't know how much I can relate.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have anyone making fun of me watching a certain show to this extreme, but I do remember one particular instance in elementary school where I was actually talking about Arthur, go figure, and somebody off to the side heard me, and they were like, "Oh, he's talking about Arthur."
Oh. Yeah, well, was it as bad as how Arthur's classmates treated him?
No, it was basically a one and done deal, so I was very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, so shorter lived, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that pretty much is Season 4, and please join us next time as we wrap up this mini-series with Arthur Season 5. And until then, stream us on YouTube Music, and I'll continue to post episodes to my Instagram, and please leave any questions or comments that you have.
Yep. And before we go, we promised you, our wonderful audience, that we'd reveal what show we're doing this year, since it was finally revealed to us this past weekend.
Right.
And I hope you're all ready to fly to the second star to the right and straight on till morning, because we are doing Peter Pan.
Yep, and I'm definitely looking forward to it.
And there might possibly, in the relative near future, or maybe as the show gets closer, we might have an episode where we start speculating who's going to play what.
Well, yeah, so either way, we're looking forward to doing Peter Pan, and maybe some of you will come out and see it, and it's going to be a good time, I think.
Oh, yeah, and we'll do what we typically do as the show rolls around, where we start speculating who's going to play what, and then have an episode after the show is done where we talk about our experience with it, and then we'll kind of start guessing what the next show is, but obviously the reveal doesn't happen for months after the show ends, so it could be a while. But regardless, it's something we do every year, so keep an eye out for it.
Yep. All right. Well, until next time, see y'all.
So long, everyone.